Okay, so folks, welcome to Moto Minds Podcast, episode 3. We've got the fantastic Annabelle and Kevin with us. As promised, we've been talking about this for a few weeks, haven't we? I'm really excited that we're finally here doing this episode, and we're going to get to hear all about Annabelle's racing career. And also, I'm really interested to find out the perspective of you, Kevin, of what it's like to be the parent of a racer, what the challenges are, and what the upsides are as well. So yeah, we'll get into it. So Annabelle, tell us a little bit of the background of your racing. So what bikes do you race, and what series do you race in?
So the bikes I race currently is a Suzuki Gixxer 125
Right.
in the Free Tech Championships in the junior class. Sometimes I take part in the endurances. I've now recently been picked up and I'm on a team now.
Fantastic.
My other bike that I race in British Mini Bike Championships is my O'Reilly 190.
Mm. Brilliant. So which do you prefer racing? Which bike do you prefer?
It is sort of like it's I don't really know how to explain it. It's tight. It's a
Yeah.
close sort of s- um. Oh,
There's not much difference, I guess,
yeah,
between yeah.
no,
Okay. Okay.
not much
Mhm.
difference. Like there is difference with the
Yeah.
power. Like the
Yeah.
190's got more power of the
Right.
than the Suzuki,
Hmm.
but handling wise, like cornering and sort of stuff, is definitely got to be the Suzuki
Right.
because where it's bigger, it's like although it's sometimes it's harder to turn throughout corners, it's a lot more comfortable. Whereas the 190, you got to make sure like you're careful coming out the corners so you don't high side. But I suppose that's like on any other bike as well.
Yeah, yeah. And the GSXR 125 is a fantastic little bike, especially for young people getting into the world of sports bikes. But I imagine that your GXXR 125 is very different from a bike you can buy in the shop. It's had quite a few modifications, right?
Yeah, so me and my dad, when we first bought the bike, we stripped out all the cables, like took out some of the parts that we didn't necessarily need
Mm.
to try and make it lighter because, the lighter the bike is, the quicker you can get and the easier it is to sort of slipstream down some of the bigger tracks.
Mhm.
So yeah, we've done quite a little bit to it, but it all comes in handy.
Fantastic. So you're Annabelle McCarthy and your dad Kevin is with us. Kevin, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, my name's Kevin. I'm a father of the rider. I'm sort of chief mechanic, chief sponsor, chief organise everything, chief get in touch with everyone and
Mhm.
make the weekend work. And so that all she has to do is turn up, ride a bike
Mm.
quickly, and then we go home again afterwards.
Brilliant. So you've got your work cut out for you then. Tend
It's,
to be quite busy through race
it's a
season.
full-time job
Yeah,
on top
yeah,
of a full-time job.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I know we were chatting earlier before we started this recording, but you don't ride bikes yourself.
No, believe it or not, no, I've never really ridden a bike. I've
Mm,
messed around a little bit, but I haven't got a bike license. I don't
mm,
ride a bike. There was a plan at one point for me to get a bike, get
mhm,
leathers, do my test, and because of Annabelle's racing, and
mhm,
we needed the money for that,
mhm.
I was like, well, I can't afford to do that now. So
Yeah.
no, believe it or not, I don't actually ride a bike.
Oh,
So
fair
I get
enough.
my fix through watching her
Brilliant.
throw a bike around the track.
Awesome. No, that's really, really good. So, Annabelle, the first thing I wanted to ask you is, what first then drew you to motorbike racing? Because obviously, with your dad not riding a motorbike, because before we actually got chatting properly, I imagined that's what it would have been, right? I would have thought dad rides bikes, you want to ride bikes, but that's not the case. But what got you into bike racing?
So my dad works on camp and they made like a go-kart track there
Hmm.
and M4 Karting brought some of the go-karts up to the track and dad brought me along and I had to go on one and then they were like she's quite coordinated. How old is she? And I was 6 at the time and
Wow.
they didn't really believe that because of like how I just adapted to it
Mm.
straight away. And they went, "Do you want to come along to M4 karting on a Sunday morning and just have a little mess around on one of the mini motos?" I looked at my dad, and my dad just sort of just went, "Don't look at me."
Yeah.
Shook my head straight.
Said, don't look at me, look at your mum. So I looked at my mum, did the little puppy eye trick, and my mum went, "I'm pretty sure one go won't harm it." And then yeah, well, our bank account's nearly been bare since then.
So you did karting for a while then. So how long have you been actually racing bikes?
So I haven't really been doing karting that long. It was just a one-time
Oh,
thing.
right, okay, just the once.
Yeah, with bikes, I started just polluting around the track on a little like mini moto
Mm.
at M4 karting at 6, nearly 7. And then it just sort of got to about 9, and then that's when I was like, I want to start racing. It took some convincing by my coach to convince me, and then once she convinced me, I had my heart set on it, and then it took me ages to try and convince my mum.
But what was that transition between doing karting once and then all of a sudden being on a mini moto?
I feel like with the carts, there's a lot more sort of like going around corners. It's
Mm.
very constantly moving your hands trying to steer the steering wheel, and I just sort of was like, that's alright. It's sort of not really for me because I didn't really like being sat down that much in that position. It like hurt my back a bit. But then with the mini moto, it was easy because of the height it was. I didn't have to like sort of like struggle a little bit,
Right.
and it was just like with going around the track, I felt much more on it and in the game when I was on the bike, and I was just like, what, I thought I would just give it a turn, and then here I am now.
And what were your thoughts, Kevin, when all this was happening?
It was it was a new experience. It was go and have a go in a go kart and see if you like it. And then with the guy saying, "Bring her along," sort of, it was early mornings. It
Mm.
started at 6 in the morning, 6 till 10 on Sunday. So the last thing you want on your Sunday is to be getting up at 5 in the morning to drive over to. But you
Yeah.
know what? If your child wants to do a sport,
Mm.
you give them a go and see if they enjoy it. For as long as they want to.
Mm.
At 6 or 7, she didn't really know what she wanted to do. But then within 4 or 5 weeks,
Mm.
5 or 6 weeks of going there, she was getting her knee down round the corners, and the coaches were quite impressed. They were like, for a
Yeah.
girl, she's quite fast,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I never
Yeah.
like to use that expression, but she
Mm.
she was pretty good.
Mm.
Um, but it took some. We really didn't push the racing thing
Mm.
because with children and their sports, it's peaks and troughs. One
Mm.
week she'll be unbelievable,
Mm.
and you'll be super impressed at what they've managed to achieve in that one week.
Mm.
And then next week, if they're just not on the game, if they haven't had breakfast, if they're not
Yeah.
motivated, they really they I don't want to say underperform, but they don't perform as well as what
Yeah.
they have done previously.
Yeah.
And you have to control your feelings then, not
Mm.
to get deflated. But I
Yeah.
know she can do that. Why is
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
not doing it?
Yeah.
He's only a child.
Yeah.
So you have to
Yeah.
give her that
Yeah.
time to get used to it. And it was those peaks and troughs really that she started
Mhm.
doing it. And at about 8 or 9, there was a couple of other girls that were going to the training and they were racing.
Mhm.
So Annabelle then said, "Do you know what? I don't want to race this year because
Yeah.
they're racing."
Yeah.
So I think she needed that little bit of encouragement
Mm.
from some other girls there, rather than just the fast boys flying past her, trying to prove a point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
quicker than you. You're a girl.
Yeah.
And with other girls doing it, and she started doing it. So we found a little friend group. There was some of the boys and the girls that
Mm.
all raced together, and they've kind of all grown up,
Brilliant.
over the
Yeah.
different stages,
Yeah.
different bikes, different events. So we bump into people that we raced
Mm.
with, however many years ago.
Mm.
But yeah, so it took a while, and it wasn't something I was going to push her into too
Yeah.
much because she's a child.
I guess it's difficult to find that balance between that sort of enough encouragement to keep it up and keep at it, but not go too far to actually to put them off at that age,
Yeah, exactly. If I could have quite easily have gone, knuckle down, get on
Yeah,
with it. I know you can
yeah,
do it. But children don't learn like that.
no,
Children
no,
learn from encouragement. Children
mm,
learn by their mistakes.
yeah,
They understand it, and she
yeah,
beats herself up enough for
mm,
me to have to do that now. If she doesn't, if she has a bad weekend, if
mm,
she has a bad qualifying session, if she has a bad race, she'll come in, visor down, storm off in a stress, shouting and screaming,
mhm,
and I leave her to it. That's
yeah,
part of that maturing and growing and
yeah,
understanding what's right, what's wrong. She'll then work out where she went wrong, and then she'll realize I don't want to do that again, so I'm going to do it differently. So
mm,
some of the time it's coach dad,
yeah,
but as I don't ride, as I
mm,
don't race, I can only go that
mhm,
much. She has to learn some of it herself. We do
yeah,
get help. We get some
yeah,
extra coaches to give her a hand as well to teach her the things that I can't.
mm,
But it's a big self development journey
mm,
for Annabelle as a child and a racer.
yeah. And I guess the enjoyment's always got to be there as well, isn't it? You've got to enjoy what you're doing, and if you're pushing yourself so hard or you're being pushed so hard that you stop enjoying it, then I'm sure the performance would suffer.
Definitely.
But before we go more onto the mental side of things, because it was interesting that you said that when you were at M4 karting, somebody had said, "Oh, she's fast for a girl." That's one thing I wanted to touch on actually, from your perspective, Annabelle, because racing, especially bike racing, it is very male dominated. So, how have you found that in terms of maybe challenging stigma?
I suppose I just sort of, with school and stuff like that, I've sort of grown up with some boys,
Mm,
and my friendship group was mostly boys rather than girls. So to be honest, racing with the boys hasn't really phased me or anything like that. There was a point where I was like, okay, maybe I don't like this because of how much like the boys had progressed more than me.
yeah.
But then my dad used to make quite a good point to me. The girls are very smooth through corners where the boys are very erratic.
Mm.
And that's the part that used to scare me most, is them being erratic. But you just sort of, when you've been racing for a certain amount of time, you just sort of know how to adapt to it. And you actually start to learn from them.
Yeah.
Like at the beginning of my racing season, I used to be very, you go first, like you go into corner first. But now I'm sort of getting back at it of like, no, like leave, that's my position, move. Like I go back at them now
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Right, yeah. And that's interesting because you do see some racers who are quite erratic and aggressive, and you see some that are really, really smooth. Like if you remember Jorge Lorenzo, smooth as butter was one of his mantras. And he was one of the fastest guys in the world. And then you look at Marc Marquez, who's known for being quite aggressive, he's still one of the
Yeah.
fastest guys in the world. So touching on the mental side of it then, Annabelle. So obviously bike racing is quite physical. But how do you prepare mentally for a race?
So for me personally, what I do is that I'll go and talk to some of my friends,
Mm,
like probably about 5 minutes before I'm out, and I'm in my helmet, like I'm ready, sort of, I'm already ready. I just go and talk to them, have a little
mhm,
talk, and then I'll go back to mine. I'll get my phone. I'll slot my phone in my helmet, and I'll put some music on and put my visor down for about 2 minutes
mhm,
or so. But then I don't. If I keep it on for too long, I will then just think about that the whole race, and I won't really perform properly.
mhm.
So then I'll like get my dad to take out my helmet because I've got my gloves on. I can't get it back out, and then I'll go back over with my mate Lucas, and we'll have a little mess around to get our like adrenaline up and everything like that. Like we'll punch each other or something like that. And then we get shouted at by Hudson's mum saying checker flags out, and then we all rush over to the bikes and go and sit on the bikes, and then we get the tire warmers off, and then we'll go and sit in pit lane, and we'll be messing around and everything like that. I think I got a couple of photos of us all just messing around, and then as soon as we get on track, we just instantly get in the zone.
Brilliant. And is there a pep talk from yourself at some point before a race, Kevin? Is there a few quiet words that you might have?
Don't mess up.
Yeah.
Bring it home rubber side down.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Brilliant.
it depends on the weekend. It depends on the track. It's remembering your lines, remembering your apexes.
Mm,
If it's a practice session, remember it's a practice session.
mm,
It's not the battle of the warm ups.
yeah.
Just take it easy, get used to it. Qualifying, it's qualifying. You need to put a hot lap in.
Mhm,
Get out behind someone that can drag you along a little bit rather than being out in no man's land on your own. And then for the race, it's just stick with them, do what you can do. You know you can do it.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then it's a strange feeling, sort of saying not goodbye to them, but give them the bit of
Yeah.
fist bump. Half the time she's like, "Go on, Dad, go away, leave me alone." And it's that, "Go on,
Brilliant.
you've got this." And then
Yeah.
I'll go and stand on the side. And for a parent,
Yeah.
that's quite a strange feeling. Seeing
Yeah.
your child
Yeah.
then disappear off down the track, and you're like,
Yeah. So I guess there's a roller coaster of emotions at that point,
"Yeah."
right? Pride, fear,
Friday's practice day is not so much. It's
Mm,
practice. Go
yeah.
out, do it.
Yeah.
That's it. Saturday, there's a little bit more on the line because it's qualifying. You
Mm,
want them to do well because they'll beat themselves up if they're qualified mid to the end of the pack. They'll beat themselves up because they know they can do
yeah.
better. They're
Yeah.
passionate as well because they enjoy the sport. And then Sunday race day, race 1, you see all the dads look at each other. Race 2, oh my God, I feel sick. I just want to. And race 3, all the dads are the same. We just want them, and the mums as well.
Yeah.
We just want them to come home, have a great weekend, put everything in the van, and let's go home and go and tell everyone how much of a great weekend you've had.
Yeah.
So there is that roller coaster that progresses through the weekend. Yeah.
Because it's a dangerous sport, right?
It is. It is a dangerous sport. It's one of the. Do you take it for granted? Occasionally, you can take it for granted. If it's in the back of your mind, you can never forget that. But you know that you're not just putting your child on a bike on a track with fast kids without prior training.
Yeah.
Annabelle's been riding since 6 or 7. She's 14 now. She's had 6 years worth of being on a bike. They learn to race together. They learn to enter the first corner together. They learn to crash.
Yeah.
They learn how to crash. They learn what to do, what not to do if they crash. So it's a massive learning curve, and so that's the mitigation element of it. You know that they've had plenty of training, and you know that the majority of the other kids she's up against have all had that training as well. So it does make it a bit safer.
Good. And in that time since you've been racing, then, Annabelle, has there ever been any sort of moments of doubt? Like, have you ever thought or questioned carrying on with the racing or doing something different?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, my voice went a bit. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, definitely. So, there's been a couple of times, not just out on track, but just genuinely in paddock. Because where some of the boys are quite rough and tumble in the paddock, I just sort of didn't really sort of enjoy that, and it just sort of made me question why I'm actually here. And then but then I just sort of went, you're here, like, because you're racing, it doesn't matter about what they're doing, just leave them be. And then it just sort of, when I had a massive crash at Three Sisters, and then I went back at that track last year after my crash, and I was quite nervous, but then I gradually built up again. And then it wasn't until like qualifying and races came around when I had all the front runners and the faster lot all coming past me, and like they were doing things that, let's say, shouldn't really be doing down the straight, like swerving, and they were nearly clipping my front wheel, and it just sort of threw me off racing. Like, I remember coming into my dad and I just bawled my eyes out, and I then got calmed down by one of the front runners' mums. And she was like, "It's fine. Like, if you think about it, they're not going to be there next year. You've only got to put up with about 2 or 3 more rounds, and then they're going to be gone out that paddock, and you don't need to worry about it." And then that just sort of made me snap back to it, and I was like, you know what? She's got a point. They're not going to be there next year. I don't have to worry about them. And it's only at this track, because they never normally like lap me, and if they do, it's at a track that I've had a bad experience with in the past.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Three Sisters racetrack, where is that?
That is up in
Wigan.
Oh,
It's up
okay.
near Wigan.
Yeah. So that's obviously quite memorable then. You said you had a really bad crash there. Has there been any other sort of significant memorable moment in your career for good or bad reason?
There's been a couple of, like, let's say, like, crashes. I remember flying through the air at Three Sisters, funny enough. It was quite spectacular.
Did you catch it on camera?
Yeah,
Oh, brilliant.
I have the recording of it, and the first thing I said when I was in the back of the ambulance was there a recording of it? Because if there wasn't, I'm gonna need to go recreate it again. And then about the first time I went to Three Sisters, my memorable moment, that was a good part before it then turned bad.
Right.
I was going around on my bike. I was actually on Marco's 50, and I was going around quite fast, to be honest, and it was good because I got so many, like, praise for that. So because, like, Marco, I was like about 2 seconds off the time Marco was doing the dry when it was in the wet, but Three Sisters is a very grippy track in the wet.
Yeah.
And then I was doing a flying lap, and I went up the hill, where the gravitational force changes, there's some bumps on the inside, and where the track had dried, that was still like a wet patch.
Right. Okay.
And I just clipped it, and I just shot across the track off the bike. hit the barrier and I flipped up and landed in the barrier.
Wow. Did it hurt?
Yeah, I hurt on my knee, but I just sort of pushed through it. I was like, well, I had no option to push through it. Dad sort of made me push through it.
But that's interesting as well, because I guess we've got yourself and your dad here, but there's probably other family members that are concerned about the safety and the accidents. And do you get any pressure from any other family members?
Um, the, the wife's not as enthusiastic about this sport
Okay.
as myself and Annabelle. All the races are filmed. They've got live YouTube channels or live Facebook channels. So depending on the championship, depends on where they are. So normally over a race weekend, I'll send out some posts with the link to the live feed so people can sit at home and watch the races. The bad thing is that they are filmed live. So if there are any incidents, one of Annabelle's incidents up in Three Sisters, where she had quite a big high side, as she said, it was quite spectacular. But when your wife is sat at home watching that live feed and it pans to that incident, of course, then the phone goes off while you're trying to deal with the child on the track and the ambulance and everything else. So luckily, Annabelle, in the grand scheme of things, wasn't injured too badly. It wasn't particularly bad, but trying to settle the nerves of somebody that's just watched it on TV is a lot harder than being there and seeing it firsthand and still speaking to them and everything. So I'd say from that point of view, yes, it's, as we discussed earlier, it's a dangerous sport.
And it's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? Because I get a lot of people, strangely enough, sometimes ask me, how do I convince my parents to let me get a bike? And that's for riding on the road. And then on one hand, you could say actually riding on the track is more dangerous because of the speed and the risk. But actually, the paradox is it's probably safer because you haven't got all the other road users,
That's argumentative from both parts.
Mm-hmm.
For a racing point of view, I say it's safer to race on a track because you don't have oncoming traffic, and you have quite fast reaction times when you're on track, and there's not as many potholes and there's not as many dangers like deers running across out in front of you. Let's just say you don't have that big of issues. There could be a crash in front of you, and maybe you do sometimes you can't avoid it, but you don't get as hurt as you would do on the road, because on the road all it takes is one car to hit you, and you could be either hit into a ditch, but into oncoming traffic or anything like that. But then from a rider's point of view, you're not going that fast as well. But still, you have oncoming traffic that could possibly kill you.
And on track, you've got runoff areas, safety barriers, air fencing, things like that.
You've got marshals as well to help you, whereas on the road you don't. You're gonna have to rely on a car stopping by or another rider to help you. But even then, it's still really dangerous.
So
I think it's the difference in the safety equipment as well. The leathers, the extra protection, the extra chest protectors. Some people who go out for a ride on their bike, that they might not have as much protection as what these kids have. It's something that's specified, and as a parent, you make sure your child has got the proper safety equipment to go and do this racing. So there's that element as well.
Before you race, obviously you go through scrutineering with the bike, but is all your equipment, your leathers checked as well?
Everything's checked.
Helmets are checked. They check the buckle on the bottom of your helmet to make sure that's secure. They check the bottom of your boots to make sure they're not worn away by the way you place your feet. They check your leathers to make sure they're safe enough to ride in. They check your gloves as well for any holes. They check everything. They make sure you have your dog tags on just in case you crash and you're unresponsive. They make sure you have your chest protector and a back protector on. They make sure you have got everything on.
Yeah, good. And just to touch back very briefly on the challenges around young females, especially getting into racing. So, how many other young females do you race with? And do you think it's still as challenging now for young females as it might have been years ago?
Well, so in the classes I race in, so the O'Reilly 190 FIM Cup, there's only me in that championship. I'm
Right.
the only female rider in that championship. In the Free Tech Junior Cup, which is sort of like for 16 and under, there's only me again, the only female rider in that. But then they have recently in the whole Free Tech Championship, they have started up a girls team, but I'm too young to be in that team. So there's probably about 4 to 6 other female riders in the Free Tech Championship. And then in the British Mini Bike Championship, there's probably about, I want to say, about 3 other girls, and that's it. Because the rest of them are either in a different championship or progressed up.
So there's not that many really. That's a shame, isn't it? Really, because I'm sure it would be amazing if we could get more young females. I mean, young people in general, especially into because if we look at, for example, MotoGP, there's no British riders in the GP class now. We've got Jake Dixon in the Moto2, for example. And then you look at the European countries, Spain, Italy, the amount of investment they put into young people in general getting into the top classes of racing. But the UK doesn't seem to do that as well, and especially, like you say, for young female racers. So, Kevin, when did you first realise that you were going to become a full-time paddock dad? Yeah.
I think when Annabelle started racing her first year, and then she was doing pretty well, even on the mini motos.
Yeah.
But it was the enjoyment; it was seeing your child enjoying it.
Yeah.
And I think at the time when they're only and I say this, they're only on the mini bikes. It's fun for them, and that's where as an adult and a parent you can socialize in the evenings, but it's also a learning curve. You're learning about the bikes. Now, my background, I was a mechanic background, but I worked on battle tanks, in the army. So fixing a little mini moto, slightly different from fixing a 70-ton main battle tank.
Yeah.
But mechanics are mechanics.
Yeah.
Undoing a nut and bolt is the same as whether you're doing it on a bike or doing it on a tank. So, you do learn elements, you learn little tips and tricks, you learn about the tire pressure. So it's all a big learning curve. And I think I enjoyed that element. I enjoyed that side. It was a learning process for me. It was keeping my hand in engineering as well. So I enjoyed that. And of course, then the more Annabelle grew, she got too big for the bikes, then progress onto the next bike, and you then have to learn that bike, then progress onto the next bike, and then you have to learn that bike. I say the mechanics, but the processes are the same. Tires and tire warmers and tire pressures are the same, no matter what bike. It's just the intricate parts of how that bike is built or how that bike works.
So, I mean, I was going to say, like, do you have any help and support in learning, like the characteristics or the best engine setup for a GSX-R 125, for example?
So, the good thing about the paddock is, certainly at this level, is the whole point of getting the kids in racing is to get the kids in racing. And I think you'd be a bit hard-nosed if you went, well, I'm not helping them because they're my competition. So everybody seems to have a similar mentality of, let's get the kids out racing. Oh, what, you broke the bike? Oh, I've got a spare on the van. Do you want to borrow that for the weekend? And it's all about
that. Quite inclusive. And,
very much. I'll give you a hand to fix your engine tonight. Oh, your brakes aren't working. Right, let's get them off. Let's get your wheel out. You do this, I'll do that. You get your tyres changed, I'll fix your brakes. So it's a real, there's that camaraderie that's helping each other out. Even though your children might be battling against each other, you are there for one reason, and that is to get kids riding bikes. And that's the sort of common goal in it all.
Brilliant.
So I think I realised that we were going to progress through when she was pretty good, and as long as Annabelle enjoys it, we'll keep on supporting it. The minute Annabelle says, "Dad, I don't want to do it anymore," brilliant. Let's sell everything and get some money back and start going on some family holidays
Go
and
fishing or
doing
something.
all the things. Dad can do his bike license now. Start doing all the things that we've not sacrificed, but we're not. We don't do because it's quite a busy season.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And touching on the bike maintenance and setup, Annabelle, do you do any of the work in the paddock yourself, or do you try and get involved with the bike and learn more about it? Like, how much hands-on do you have?
So sometimes all the time, I let my dad do it, because I sometimes, if it's at home, I help out occasionally. So whether like I helped out with my brakes on my Suzuki. Um, I've got very short attention span. So if I get stood there for too long, I'll get distracted by something. I'll go off and do that. And I don't really mean to, but I do.
Sure.
But in the paddock, I sort of let my dad just do it because I know it's gonna take him longer explaining to do something to me than it is just for him to do it himself.
Yeah.
And if it's, let's say, if it's a tire change between a race, I'll just let him crack on with it because I don't want to get in the way,
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to race against time, you just sort of just let him do it himself because he knows how to change tires. I don't. Like I think the most I do sometimes in between races is take the front tire one more often. Even then I struggle because I've got my gloves on.
And that's interesting because I guess you trust your dad to work on your bike, and obviously, Kevin, you've got to put your trust in Annabelle when she's out on track. So it's interesting that dynamic. And has Annabelle's racing career, has that changed your dynamic, your relationship at all?
We get to spend yes and no. I think as a dad, you go through a stage where up to the age of about 10, Annabelle was my shadow. She wouldn't leave me alone. We'd spend all the time together, cuddles on the sofa, watching TV, and then kids get older. They start going out with groups of friends. They
Yeah.
find cooler things to do than
Yeah.
sitting around with their dad. The good thing is we do get to spend a bit of time in the van together. Some of the tracks are 6 hours away, so she hasn't really got any choice. She's got to sit in the van with me. We do have good conversations, and I think that helps, keep
Yeah.
that father-daughter bond up.
Good.
Being away and looking at. I do give her a free space. She's got to go and she's also got to go and be a child.
Yeah.
She's got to go and meet a friend. She's got to go and socialise. She's got to do her own learning. The thing you're asking her about whether she fixes her bike or not. It's as a she's getting to the age now where Annabelle can now tell me if something's wrong with the bike and why. Whereas when you're
Brilliant.
younger, it doesn't feel right. Why? It just doesn't feel right. I don't like it. It's not working.
Yeah.
Now it's the suspension's too hard on the front. It's really bouncing. It's doing this. So she's able to give me a bit more input now so that I can do stuff. And I think the further we progress through it, she's going to have to start taking ownership of doing that, some of it herself. We're going up to the bigger bikes next year. She's going to be riding on the bigger, size national tracks. She's going to have to come in and tell me the gearing on this corner's not right. We need to change it, or the suspension's. She's going to have to elaborate a bit more. I think that's all part of growing up as a kid. So whereas, yes, it's easier for me to run around and do things at the moment, we're going to get to a point where, well, you know how to do that now, or I'll show you how to do it so that you can do that while I work on something else. And I think that's just that natural progression. But I think that the bond for us is that going away. It's the fun. It's the let's not take it too seriously. But let's have fun. But still, you got to put the effort in.
Yeah.
Put the effort in. You get the results. You get the results. You get the sponsorship.
Yeah.
You get the sponsorship. You get coaching. You get coaching. You get better. You get better results. You get more sponsorships. It's a big vicious circle.
Yeah. And that's good because I guess it's probably already in your mind, Annabelle, right? That the more you do this and the better you get, it's going to transition from a hobby and a bit of fun to something serious where you really need to focus and use your knowledge and skills that you've built up, like your dad said, about understanding what the suspension's doing, understanding what the tires are doing, and then feeding that back. Is there anyone else in the team when you go away, or is it just father-daughter? There's no one else that goes with you.
It's just me and my
Oh,
dad.
fantastic!
But so like we always park up near some of my mates,
Yeah.
like Lucas and Hudson and stuff like that. And if we need a hand, like they'll come over and help us, which is quite handy because they're sort of like a little team together.
Yeah.
So it's helpful. Yeah.
But you still want to beat them. So in between races, Annabelle, what do you do? Because at the moment, I say it's a hobby, it's a fun, although I'm sure you take it seriously when you're on the track. But when you're not racing, in between races, is it on your mind to stay physically fit for the race, mentally fit for the race? Like, what happens in between the races, or do you just completely switch off from racing?
So in between races, I sort of like I take my helmet off and everything like that. I'll go into my caravan, I'll get a drink, come back out, and I'll go over to my mate Kira and Lucas, and we'll have like a little gossip session about on track and who did what and what. And yeah, we'll just gossip about the track and who didn't really do a good move and who did. And then we'll all just go and sit in mine and we'll just play some music.
Right.
And then to calm our nerves down. And then again, before we go out, repeat what we do. We'll go and get a helmet and that on. We'll then go and meet up in the middle, have another little gossip about what we're going to do when we're out, disperse. I'll go and get my phone. Then me and Lucas will go and stand like sort of together, punch each other, mess around and all that to get heightened again. And then I'll go back, take my phone out, and then we'll go and stand there and just look at each other dead serious, like, yeah, we're in the zone. And then we wait for the call of checker flags gone out, and then again we disperse and all scurry over to our bikes and then get the tires warmers off and go, yeah, we'll just drive away.
And then what goes through your mind? Like you're on the grid, you're just waiting for the lights to go out. Like the phone's gone now. There's just you and your helmet. What goes through your mind in that last few seconds, 10 seconds before the green light?
Nothing.
No, nothing at
No,
all.
I don't. For me, I when I'm out on the bike, I don't really think of anything.
Hmm.
It's more of just focusing on the lights because if I think about something, I'll think too much about that
Yeah.
rather than focusing on the lights. And I've made that mistake before, and I've pulled off like a little bit later than everyone else because I haven't been focusing that well. So my best thing is don't think of anything. Just sit there, watch the lights. As soon as they go off, that's when I can start thinking again. But even then, it takes me about 4 or 5 laps to start thinking again because I just where I'm like constantly like focusing, I like sometimes I forget to blink, sometimes I don't breathe properly. I remember I did a whole lap without breathing and then realized I need to breathe and then started breathing again. But the main thought that goes through my head is, right, the person in front of you is there, like, come on, we got to get them. And then, like, when I see my pit board go out and my dad will be holding, it's either my pit board or if there's not enough space to do the pit board, it's normally that to prove how far someone's behind me and how close they're getting. And when I see this, I'm like, oh my God, I need to pack up my ideas. We got to go. And then I don't think about anything again.
Right.
And then I'll pull a gap
Yeah.
and then I'll start thinking again because I think I'm out with their view,
Yeah.
but I'm really not. And then my dad would be like that, and then go like that, and I'm like, oh God, and then I'll panic again, and it's just sort of that's what I'm like. I'll panic again, and then I'll pull a massive gap again. I'm like, right, I need to focus now. And then I see my dad go like that, and I'll just sort of relax a little bit, and I'll go around the next time, and he'll be like that, and I'll be like, oh my God, what am I doing?
That's brilliant. And do you prefer, like, do you have a preferred strategy? So do you prefer to, like some races like to sit behind first and second, wait till the last couple of laps, make a move, or would you prefer to be out in front, nobody in front of you, just creating as much space as possible?
You know what? It's just a little bit of mix and match. I know with the free tech stuff, I'm in a massive group just full of people and we'll constantly changing. We'll go around one corner and I'll be in front, go around the next corner, I'll be mid pack, go around the next corner and I'll be right at the back with like a gap. And this season, at the very beginning of the free tech stuff, I made a massive move. Like I was in eighth position out of these like group of people. I was in eighth, and on the last corner, everyone was braking really early, and I remember just thinking, why is everyone braking so early? But because I thought about that, I missed my braking marker,
Right.
shot past all of them. Everyone thought I wasn't going to make the corner, and I managed to make the corner. And it was the last lap, last corner, and the checker flag was right in front of me. I held it, and I went from eighth to fourth in one corner just by
Amazing.
missing my braking marker.
What went through your mind at that
It
point,
was a
Kevin?
fantastic move.
Yeah,
It was the last race of the day before she
yeah,
was then going to go as part of the jump on a completely
yeah,
different bike and do a 6 hour endurance race as part of the 3 person team. And
yeah.
me and one of the other riders were there. and we could see them all coming down this really long straight and very, very Moto 3 style where they're all slipstreaming.
Yeah.
One pulled out, another one pulled out, another one pulled out, another one pulled out, and they were 5 wide coming down the straight. And I was like, oh my goodness.
It was right at the back, and I sort of came out a little bit
Yeah.
because the person in front of me just sort of dropped a little bit, so I
Yeah.
came out a little bit, and I went to the furthest I could possible because I was waiting for it. I was like, they're all going to take each other out on this corner. I was waiting for it, and then they all broke really early, and I just shot through this gap that probably wasn't even a gap, and I just made it stick.
I just
Wow.
saw this white missile past more, and me and the other one go, oh my God, she's missed her braking point. She's not going to make it. And she banked the bike over, and she just held it and held it and held it, got on the gas and went across on, and we couldn't believe what a move.
I guess sometimes you've got to take your brain out and go
She's
for
always been
those
quite good on the brakes.
maneuvers.
She's always been good like
Yeah.
that. Even from the,
Yeah.
very young on the mini motos, she'd leave it
Mm.
to the last minute and really brake quite heavy
Yeah.
and do some really good moves. So that, it's that different, learning the different riding styles and
Yeah.
the endurance stuff and the kid stuff when they're doing it Moto 3
Yeah.
stuff, because the bikes aren't very powerful. They're 15 horsepower,
Mm.
So being able to do it and use the slipstream and then brake later and get on
Yeah.
the gas earlier,
Yeah.
it's a different style of riding where
Yeah.
they learn. But yeah, it was a great, really good. Got a lot of praise for that. A lot of people going, "What
Yeah.
a move
I'm
from
really
Randy!
proud of
What a
that.
move!"
Amazing.
Yeah.
That one will stick in your mind for sure. And what does a season look like? So how long is a race season on the 125? Say.
So the 125 it started quite early, to be honest, but
Yeah.
this is my first ever time doing like a full season in the
Okay.
free tech stuff. Last season I did 2, and that was about it. I did Wilton Mill, and then I did Pembury karting circuit, and that was the only 2 I did. Whereas this season I've managed to get a bike, doing the full season. It started around about April, March, March, April time, and there's a couple left. Not that much really.
We've got one abroad as well. One of the rounds they go to
really?
Spain, so I think it's Navarra. I think we're to Navarra in
Right.
Spain.
Okay.
So they do. I think it's that. It might be a different one. I can't remember now. But there's definitely a Spain
Mm.
round. It's towards the end of the year. I think it's like November time, and that goes towards the British Championship. So they do the junior event there, and that's point scoring, and then they do an endurance race out there as well.
That's amazing. That would be a fantastic experience.
Yeah, that'd be really good. So.
And when does the season end? And where are you in the rankings so far this season?
So the season will probably end around about October.
Yeah.
Usually October. We're in 2 different championships this year, as Annabelle said, British Mini Bikes and Free Tech. The weekends tend to be intermittent, and they tend to be around things like British Superbikes.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the guys that ride or are part of these championships also take part in British Talent Cup or are members of teams that race in Supersport and so on and so on.
Yeah.
So they tend to try and make the weekends alternate to British Superbikes. So yeah, usually finishes around about October time. There's 5 rounds of British Mini Bikes this year, and I think there's 5 or 6 rounds of the Free Tech Championships.
Right.
We could do more. We could do some of the Bemsy rounds as well, but then you're using a lot of weekends up, and it's costing more and more money. And the different championships charge different amounts of money for the events at the weekend. Yeah. So it's all very much dependent on how much money you've got left at the end of the season. It will depend on what, in addition, you can do. The more track time you get, the better you get. You need more money to do the track time though. So
and so what roughly then for this season would the season cost with the bike, fuel, tires, entry?
So I think at this level, and this is probably the cheapest level to go in at, you're probably looking at around about £10,000 to £15,000 for the season.
Yeah.
If you were to buy one of the bikes, the Avali bike, you're talking £8,000. By the time you bought the bike, the wheels, the spares, all the bits to go with it. Then each entry is £250 entry for a weekend. Set of tyres, you're talking £200 for a set of tyres. On the smaller bikes, depending on the track, depends how abrasive it is, depends on your tyre usage. Pembury track is quite abrasive. We'll go through 2 rear tyres and 1 front tyre in a weekend. Whereas if we go to Wilton Mill, it's quite a smooth track, not so abrasive. You could probably do 3 weekends at Wilton Mill on the same set of tyres.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
it really depends on the type of track. The Free Tech bike uses the Moto 3 tyres, so they're more expensive. The entry fees are roughly similar. But as we start going into Bemsey next year, you're talking £500 for a weekend just to enter, then the tyres, then the fuel for the bike, fuel for the generator, fuel for the van, food, towing the caravan. Yeah, so it all adds up. So currently, I think each weekend you're probably looking at £600 to £800 at a weekend at the moment, and the more we do, the more you're paying out. So yeah, it gets quite pricey. It does help to have some sponsors. We're really lucky this year to be able to have a couple of sponsors. But
Who are your sponsors?
So we've got on the leather zone, we've got a fire consultancy specialist. That's an old army friend of mine that he really wanted to get involved and help Annabelle out. We've got JAC Air Conditioning. They're an air conditioning company that were based in Horsham, but they're up in Lincoln sort of area now. They're again friends of the family. And LRA Motor Group, LRA Group. They've just changed, so it's London Rope Access, and they're just starting to evolve, and they've got a bit of a moto thing going on as well. They're importers of a LRA Moto 190 style bike that you're going to start seeing more of now in some of these mini bike championships, and it's fantastic. It's very similar to the Ovale or the Bucci, the 190, and it's a similar make to that. So we're really lucky to have those on board this year, but what we've got only just about covers the entry fees, but if we did any more, it doesn't. So we're paying that out. So yeah, it's quite a bit. We're always on the lookout for sponsors.
Good. So if anybody is watching this, folks, and you're willing to sponsor Annabelle and Kevin, then get in touch and we'll make that happen. So what other sacrifices have you had to make as a family? What's your views on that, Annabelle?
For me, it's probably spending more time outside of school on weekends with some of my mates. And I ended up having to give up my gymnastics career that I started from quite a young age as well, because where I started racing, it just started taking up more and more. And I ended up changing to a Wednesday, but then it was too much doing a Wednesday night of just straight up gymnastics, jumping on bars, throwing myself up a rope, for like jumping off beams, doing like conditioning stuff like that. It was keeping me in shape and fitness and stuff like that, but it would just make me ache the next couple of days, which wasn't really good with my racing because it used to affect my knees quite badly. Because where I had my first crash at Three Sisters, had some problems with some of my knees. Like I can't do long distance running without getting sharp pains in my knees, and it just sort of got to that point where it was too much. And then I was doing some after school clubs, and then my whole week just became very tight, and I didn't really have any time with any of my mates except from in school. But then that used to get me in trouble because I used to talk to them in my lessons.
Right. Okay.
So
So you've given up the gymnastics, but I mean, how do you feel about that? Is that the right decision for you? Do you regret that decision? Where do you stand on that?
sometimes I do regret it because I do miss seeing my mates in my gymnastics. Like I do miss doing some of my gymnastics. I miss just being there.
Riding bikes is more fun, though, right?
Yes, it is.
The race weekends are hard work, and it's a full weekend. So
Yeah.
we'll travel on a Thursday. So one of the rounds we're going to next is up in Cumbria. So that's a 6-hour drive for us.
Yeah.
And if we tow the caravan, you're talking 7.5, 8-hour drive up to Teesside. It took us nearly 8 hours.
Yeah.
So that's all of Thursday. Then there's all the prep. Then Friday is riding all day. It's practice sessions pretty much back to back through the whole day. Then there's the qualifying and practicing on the Saturday. So you've got at least 4 or 5 sessions, maybe 6 sessions on the Saturday. And then on the Sunday, you've got to practice in 3 races. Then we've got to drive the 7 or 8 hours back again. So it's a full-on weekend. It's hard work.
I bet you're tired when you get back on a Sunday. You know.
Yeah, I normally fall asleep by the time we actually manage to make it out the track gate.
Yeah.
She's a terrible passenger, Annabelle. Let me tell you, on the way home, I've got a lot of sleeping pictures of her.
So either I'm asleep or I'm sat there on my phone listening to my music,
Yeah.
or I'm hanging out my head out the window, trying my best not to throw up everywhere.
I guess the adrenaline, you maybe at the end of a weekend, you just get a huge adrenaline dump, and
Yeah,
then the fatigue
definitely.
sets in.
Yeah.
But what about how does that? What about schoolwork? Like, does it? That must be a difficult balance as well.
It is, but then it isn't.
Mm.
It is because I miss out on the lessons that because I'm coming up to my GCSEs now, which I'm hopefully getting my options back after this half term off. It's just sort of like it takes out some of my like work that I might necessarily need in my GCSEs. But with the homework that I get set every single week for maths, science, and English, my three main core subjects that you need to pass basically in order to get into some colleges, it's I sort of then catch up a bit, and
Yeah.
then when I get into lesson my teacher will go, oh, you missed this and this and this. It's not really that bad, we're going to continue that lesson, because normally we continue our lessons over like 2 lessons like at a time.
Yeah. Okay. So
The,
it's manageable.
the school have been really good. So
Yeah.
Braden Forest School in
Mm.
Purton on the edge of Swindon there, they've been really, really good.
Mm.
They realise that what this sport at this level
Mm.
teaches children, the school can't teach that. It
Yeah.
can't teach the courage, the discipline, the respect for others,
Mm.
you know, to be on track to do what she does. They realise that the school can't teach that, and that sport, especially at a high level, you know, a championship level, British championship level,
Yeah.
it teaches them that in spades. You know, it's really good. And they're at this point, you know, Annabelle's not into her GCSEs yet. She will be over the next couple of years. Then, as a parent, I need to, myself and my wife, we need to look at, can she
Mm.
do this much racing? Because, like I said, the travelling on a Thursday,
Yeah.
that's a Thursday to Friday out of school.
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, how tired she is on a Sunday. Is she performing to her maximum on a Monday in school?
Mm.
So we're going to have to start making some decisions
Mm.
later on, maybe next year after, especially when she comes into her GCSE subjects. Can we still afford for her to miss these times off school?
Mm.
And if so, are we now taking work with us? So when she gets there on a Thursday, well, you're not socialising Thursday, you're doing schoolwork.
Yeah.
And then you've got Friday, Saturday to socialise. So
Yeah.
we're going to have to take a bit of the rough with the smooth and make some decisions later,
Mm.
you know, next year, I think.
Yeah. It must. I'm sure it's going to be a difficult balance. But if you do continue with a racing career into next year, where do you predict Annabelle's what success do you predict if she carries on at the performing at the level she's at now?
So it's a really good question. People always ask me, what do you want for Annabelle? You know, is
Mm.
she going to be a MotoGP rider? Annabelle can be whatever she wants to be.
Mm.
Do I think we can? Do I think that we can support what it needs to, what it takes to be a MotoGP rider? Financially, I don't think we can.
Mm.
It would need a team to pick Annabelle up and develop her more than Dad, who doesn't even ride a bike,
Mm.
can at the moment. People ask me, what do I want for her? Tell you what I want, opportunity.
Yeah.
We follow someone called Jenny Tinmouth. She's
Yeah.
done British
Mhm.
Superbike riding. She does Goodwood Festival of Speed.
Yeah.
She's done Isle of Man TT. She's been a stunt rider for the Mission Impossible
Yeah.
film.
Isn't she the fastest female racer with the TT at the moment?
Quite
Probably,
possibly
yeah.
another good stat.
Mhm.
That's what I want for Annabelle, is
Mm.
opportunity.
Yeah.
At 14 years old, to be able to do what she's doing now, she's only 14.
Mm.
You know, you look at Chloe Jones, she's what, 21, 22. She's racing the Women's World Championship this year.
Mm.
Well, still only 14.
Yeah.
But she can sling a bike around the track.
Mm.
So when they ask me, what do I want for her? At the moment, opportunity.
Mm.
10 years' time, who knows? Because who knows where the world's going to be in 10 years'
Yeah.
time? Is the Women's World Championship going to be running? Is it going to be a Yamaha only championship? Is it going to be a multi-bike championship? Is it going to be linked closer to WSB? Is it, you know, MotoGP? You know, this is the first year they've run it, or second year they've run it. So
And the huge changes that might happen in the world of motorsport anyway.
Vehicles,
Electric
yeah,
vehicles,
exactly.
who knows what's going to
Exactly.
happen.
And they've got electric sort of FIM classes. There's lots that goes on, and the older Annabelle gets, the more we're open to it, the more we see it, the more it makes more sense. Because as a child, you don't, when she was younger, you don't start looking at what's happening in 5 years' time. We don't know, but now it's starting to make a bit more sense. We're starting to have a look slightly further afield. I think the plan for next year is Annabelle's probably going to step up to a Kawasaki Ninja 400 and race in the Team Green Junior Championships at a club racing called BEMSI, or British Motorsport Racing Club, I think. So yeah, she'll be doing that, and let's see what happens from there. It'll be bigger bikes on national sized tracks: Donington, Brands Hatch, Snetterton, Cadwell, Alton. So she'll be, it's a real change for her to go from the small go-kart tracks to the medium-sized tracks like Pembury, and then go up to the big national tracks.
Yeah, Alton Park and Cadwell, it's a
Yeah,
huge difference, isn't it?
that's
Huge difference.
the plan. Fingers crossed, sponsors. Fingers crossed for next year.
Yeah. And what about yourself, Annabelle? Like, what would you like to achieve in the next year or two?
To be honest, it's just I don't really know at the moment what I want to achieve. I feel like I just want to have fun more than anything. Have fun, race my heart out while I can, because you never know what could happen. You could turn that corner, and that could possibly be the last corner you turn. You could turn that corner, and you don't know what could happen. You could be in the gravel, and you could next thing you know be in a wheelchair or something like that. You don't really know. So I just really want to have fun and enjoy it like the most I can. And as soon as I don't enjoy it anymore, I've like my dad has said this, my mum said this. The minute I say I don't enjoy it is the minute I'm gonna give it up, and the minute I'm just gonna sell everything and just find a different hobby to hopefully take its place.
And that is a really level-headed way of looking at it, isn't it? To hear Annabelle talk like that, you could turn one corner and that could be your last corner, and what's really important is enjoying it. It must make you proud to hear her talk so maturely about the racing and the risks and everything else involved.
Proud, nervous, and skin all in one weekend. Yeah, it is good. I think she undersells herself a little bit. She came sixth in the UK last year. She's running fifth in the UK this year. In British mini bikes. She's good. She's fast, and now starting to develop and do these endurance events. Their team's coming first. She's the fastest rider in their team,
and it's probably important just to make the distinction. That's not fifth fastest female. That's fifth fastest rider, isn't it?
Yeah, out of all of them. Yeah. And
Brilliant.
some of those lads have been picked up now to go to British Talent Cup. Some of those lads are going to be picked up to do Red Bull Rookies. Moving up to MotoGP. So it's not just some kids mucking about on a track with some bikes. These are the top kids in the UK at those age levels. And Annabelle's out going handlebar to handlebar with them.
And to get to that level, then what else is missing? Obviously, the sponsorship and the financial side of things can be very, very high cost for. What else is missing? What else would you need to make it successful?
So I worry as a parent that I've taken Annabelle as far as I can take her with my knowledge, with my expertise. We're trying to do it on our own.
Yeah.
We pay for coaches to help her. I think for me, I would like to see Annabelle as part of a developed team, for a team to bring her on even further than I can with my limited knowledge. I would like to have a team to take Annabelle under their wing and go, your dad can fix the bike, your dad can sit out the back, whatever. We'll do your bike, we'll give you a mechanic, dad can help out if he wants. We'll take you out, coach you, we'll take you on track walks, we'll do this, we'll do that. Come with us for this, come with us for that. Come and do an event with us, come and sit on a bike on a stage, do a little talk like you're doing now. I'd like a team to consider where's motorsport going? Is it going to be like football and rugby that's developing females? Women's football, women's rugby, it's getting bigger each year. Women's motorsport has got to get bigger. It's the Women's World Championship. how are you going to get women into the World Championship if you don't start looking at the grassroots level and developing those children that have got an appetite for it? They've got the skills. You know, if Annabelle gets to 15, 16, says, "Oh, Dad, we're still doing it on our own. I don't fancy doing it anymore." Would that be different if a team came in at 15 and said, "Annabelle, we want you as part of our team. We want to develop you." She'll have that enthusiasm. She'll have that drive. She'll have that encouragement. And I do worry that if we don't start, and this is all across all girls, if we don't start developing at a younger level, when it comes to the Women's World Championship, you're only going to have one or two, maybe three riders in the UK that are able enough to compete. We've got to do a bit more, and I think that's what I need. I worry. I've taken her as far as I can take her. I think I need somebody else now to jump in and go, we know just a person. I've got a mate. It's all about who you know, not what you know
Contacts
sometimes.
and
Exactly.
and results as well. And I'm sure that if you continue performing the way you do, like, some people will notice. People will pay
Hopefully.
attention.
Fingers crossed.
So, to wrap it up, I've got one question which I'll put to you both. I'll come to you first, Kevin, and then we'll finish with Annabelle. So, if there was a one piece of advice you could give, Kevin, to a family of a young person who wants to get into racing, what would that be?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think your child's got to enjoy it. You've also got to understand there's risk. There's risk involved in everything. But you've got to understand that the risk is as controlled as could possibly be, and as long as they enjoy it, it is a fun sport. Get them started younger. Start them on the smaller bikes. That's where they learn the racecraft. They're mucking about with their mates. They're having fun in the paddock. They build up this little friendship group that's outside of school. Just go with it. If your child says, "Dad, Mum, I fancy riding a bike," consider it. Don't just go, "Nah, they're too dangerous." Have a look into it. Do your research. Get in touch with some of the groups. There's two or four very good British championships out there that run each year. You can find the British Mini Bikes, Fab Racing. You can find these championships that develop these riders. It's not just a case of going along and chucking a kid on a bike.
It's a lifestyle, isn't
They
it?
will help you to develop. And then in the evening and the whole weekend is a lifestyle. It is. It's fantastic. So my advice would be to encourage your child. Don't push them too much. And they've got to enjoy it. And remember, they're still a child. Don't shouting and screaming at your child and telling them they're underperforming is not the way to encourage your child to go up. And my last little bit of advice for any dads out there that don't like their sons being overtaken by a girl, don't start saying to your son, "Here, you're being beaten by a girl out there," because I hear it in the background quite a lot.
Being beaten by a faster rider.
And that's it. And I have seen a dad pack up and go home for the weekend because there's clearly something wrong with the bike if he's being beaten by a girl. And there was nothing wrong with the bike. It's just she pulled out 2 seconds a lap on this person. And the dad was like, "Nah, bike's clearly broken. No way you should be beaten by a girl."
No way.
She's just a faster rider. Doesn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl. And we would encourage girls to try and get involved a bit more in this as well.
Brilliant. And from yourself, Annabelle, one piece of advice to another young person who wants to start racing, what would you say?
For me personally, I would say, like my dad said, give them an opportunity, and start them off quite at a young age. But it doesn't really matter what age you start at. You could start at 6. You could start at 14. You could start at 10. No matter what, just give them the opportunity. And if they turn around and say, "I don't like it," they don't like it. Don't force them to do it now that you've said, "Oh, you can do it." They wanted to test it out. And they've tested it out and it's not their kind of thing. Move on, go and find a different thing to do. But it would be better if we got more people involved as well, especially girls.
So thank you for tuning in, folks, and a huge thank you to Annabelle and Kevin for joining me on Moto Minds Podcast. Unfortunately, I had to cut the last 60 seconds of the video because I had an audio issue and I didn't discover that issue until the edit. So I guess that's the way it goes sometimes. But yeah, a massive thank you to them both. And I wish Annabelle all the best of luck this season and all the success that she could hope for. I will try and catch up with them at the end of the season to see how she gets on and bring all of you an update. And then certainly into next season, when she moves up to the bigger bikes, it will be really interesting to follow her progress. So if you haven't already, follow Annabelle McCarthy Racing 113 on Instagram, Annabelle McCarthy Racing on Facebook, and Annabelle McCarthy 113 on TikTok to keep updated with all of her progress. The next episode of Moto Minds Podcast will be created at some point in the next couple of weeks, and I'll be back with my co-host, Immortal Bike Rider. So as soon as we know the date and as soon as we know the plan for that, I'll keep everyone updated. But for now, thank you for watching, and as always, stay safe.